I've worked a lot of jobs in my life, but nothing sticks with me quite like my time working the overnight shift at Walmart. It wasn't the work itself. Stocking shelves, dealing with customers who came in half-dressed at 2 a.m., or cleaning up messes in the aisles. It was the eerie quiet, the feeling of isolation, and the way the store felt almost abandoned once the clock struck midnight. People think a 24-hour Walmart is always busy. That's not true. After 11 p.m., the crowds thin out, leaving only a handful of shoppers, truckers stopping in for supplies, and the night shift crew dragging themselves through their tasks. The store hums with a kind of unnatural silence, the kind that makes you hyper-aware of every creak, every flickering light, and every shadow just outside the glow of the overhead fluorescents. I had a habit of parking in the farthest part of the lot. Management encouraged us to leave the closer spots for customers, but honestly, I didn't mind. I liked the quiet. After spending 8 hours under harsh lights, dealing with beeping registers and endless questions, the darkness of the outer lot felt peaceful, until the night it didn't. It was just after 3 a.m. and I had just clocked out. The shift had been exhausting. Stocking pallets, handling a minor spill in frozen foods, and dealing with a guy who insisted we had a secret stash of PlayStation 5s in the back. By the time I reached my car, parked at the far edge of the massive lot, I was running on fumes. I tossed my bag onto the passenger seat, took a deep breath, and leaned back for a moment before heading home. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a few scattered cars and a couple of parked semi-trucks near the loading docks. Walmart trucks came and went at all hours, so I didn't think much of it. Then I heard it. A sharp, deliberate rap on my driver's side window. I jolted upright, my heart slamming into my ribs. Standing just outside my car was a man, or something that looked like a man. He was tall, unnaturally tall, gaunt. His face was pale, almost sickly under the yellow glow of the streetlights. His eyes were shadowed, hollow. He wore a long, dark coat that looked too heavy for the mild night air. He didn't move like a normal person. There was something deliberate about the way he stood there, hand still pressed against my window, as if he knew I had nowhere to go. He leaned in slightly and spoke. "Roll it down." His voice was low, gravelly, but there was no urgency in it, no aggression. Just an eerie calm that somehow made it worse. Every instinct in me screamed no. I reached for the door lock and pressed it down, my fingers shaking. I didn't even realize I had left the doors unlocked. His expression didn't change. He rapped on the window again, harder this time. I said, "Roll it down." I shook my head, barely breathing. Then the knocking turned into pounding. Violent, forceful pounding. The whole car shook as he slammed his palm against the glass, again and again. His voice, still low but growing, more guttural, became more demanding. "Roll it down," bang, "roll it down," bang, bang. The entire car felt like it was vibrating from the force of his blows. Panic surged through me. I fumbled with my keys, hands slick with sweat. I could barely think. Every muscle in my body screamed to move, to get out. I jammed. The key into the ignition twisted, and the engine roared to life. The pounding stopped. The man or thing took a step back, and for the first time I saw him smile. Not a normal smile. It was stretched, too wide, his lips curling unnaturally. It was as if he knew something I didn't, like this was a game to him. I slammed my foot onto the gas. The tires squealed against the asphalt as I peeled out of the lot, my headlights cutting across the vast emptiness. My pulse was hammering, so hard in my ears that I barely registered the world around me. But just before I turned onto the main road, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The man was still standing there, still smiling. He didn't chase me. He didn't move. He just stood in the middle of the lot, watching a dark silhouette against the blinding parking lot lights. I didn't go straight home. I drove for nearly an hour, making random turns, stopping in well-lit gas stations just to make sure I wasn't being followed. The next day I reported the incident to Walmart security. They checked the cameras, but the footage was corrupted. Every frame from that time in the parking lot was a jumbled mess of static and distortion. I never parked in the far lot again, and I never worked the night shift after that, because deep down, I knew whatever I saw that night wasn't just some random guy, and he hadn't needed me to roll down the window, he just wanted me to. The night shift at Walmart has a strange rhythm. The store isn't closed, but it might as well be. You get a few late-night shoppers, some insomniacs, some drifters, and the occasional trucker grabbing supplies. But mostly it's just us. The stockers, the janitors, the cashiers pulling graveyard duty. My name is Eric Davis, and 10 years ago I was the night shift supervisor at a 24-hour Walmart in Indianapolis. It was a routine job. Count the inventory, check the cameras, make sure the night crew stayed on task. Most nights were uneventful. But one night we lost a guy. Leo worked overnight stocking dry goods. He was quiet, kept to himself, but he was reliable, a solid worker. That night he was working in the back of the store near the bakery and frozen foods, unloading pallets. Around 2 a.m. he came up to me at the service desk, looking pale. "There's someone in frozen," he said. I looked up from my clipboard. "A customer?" "No." He shook his head. "Not a customer." The way he said it made my skin prickle. I grabbed my radio. "You sure?" Leo just stared at me. He was standing by the freezer doors, long coat, just watching me. I sighed. Maybe it was some drifter who'd wandered in off the street. The front doors were automatic and the self-checkout area was staffed by just one cashier at night. Maybe someone slipped in and started lurking. "All right," I said. "Let's check it out." I walked back with Leo, passing rows of empty aisles and stacked pallets. The freezer doors were closed, condensation fogging the glass. Nobody there. Still, I walked up and down the section, checked the end caps, peered into the back stockroom. Nothing. Leo was rigid, his eyes darting around like he expected something to jump out. "I swear, Eric," he murmured. He was just there. I didn't know what to say, but something about that spot felt wrong. After checking the area, I sent Leo back to work. I figured he was tired. Maybe his brain was playing tricks on him. Night shifts could do that to a person. But about an hour later, he came back looking worse. He's closer now. I didn't even ask. I just followed him back. Leo was shaking as he pointed toward the freezer aisle. Right there, by the bakery entrance. I scanned the area. The store was dead quiet. Just the distant hum of the coolers, the occasional crackle of the PA system. Then the motion sensor lights flickered. I tensed. The lights ran on timers, but they didn't normally glitch like that. I walked toward the bakery, my boots squeaking on the tile. I checked behind the cake display, the prep area, even the walk-in freezer. No one. I turned to Leo. "Nobody's here, man." Leo just stood there, breathing hard. He's watching me. I felt a chill run through me. I didn't see anything, but the air felt wrong, heavier, like something was standing too close. That was enough for me. I told Leo to go home early. He didn't argue. Just grabbed his stuff and left. I watched him walk out through the employee exit. That was the last time I saw him alive. The rest of the night was uneventful. I made my rounds, checked the cameras, nothing. At 7 a.m., the store manager, Mr. Lutz, came in. I told him what happened, half expecting him to laugh it off. Instead, he frowned. "Leo's mentioned something like that before." That made me pause. "What do you mean?" "He said he always felt cold in frozen foods," Lutz said. "Like a draft even when the freezers were sealed. Said sometimes it felt like someone was behind him." I thought about the flickering lights, the way the air had felt heavy. Lutz pulled up the security footage from the night before. "Let's check the cameras," he muttered. I leaned in, watching as the footage played. The timestamp read 3:07 a.m. There was Leo standing near frozen foods, looking panicked, then me waking up beside him. But that was it. No figure, no long coat. Leo had been staring at something that wasn't there, or worse, something the cameras couldn't see. I tried calling Leo that afternoon. No answer. By evening, I got a text from one of my stalkers. "Did you hear about Leo?" My stomach dropped. "What? He's dead." I didn't believe it at first. But then I saw the news. They found him in his apartment, sitting on his couch. No signs of a struggle. No forced entry. He was just gone. The coroner ruled it inconclusive. He was 35, healthy, no drugs, no heart condition. I sat in my car that night, staring at my phone, trying to process it. And then I remembered. The pointing. Like something had been trying to lead him somewhere. Or warn him. Walmart doesn't shut down. No matter what happens, the store keeps running. People moved on. A new guy took Leo's position. But the night crew never forgot. Mark, one of my best stalkers, quit a few months later. Said he couldn't be in frozen foods at night. Said he felt like someone was always behind him. I lasted another year before transferring. I never told anyone about that night. Not really. But sometimes when I walk into a Walmart late at night, I stop near frozen foods. I feel the air, waiting to see if it shifts. And every now and then, I swear I see something out of the corner of my eye. A figure. Standing there. Watching. It started as an ordinary trip. My brother Jake and I had taken my 6-year-old niece Lily to Walmart one evening to pick up a few things. It wasn't too late, maybe around 8:30 p.m., but the store had that quiet, half-empty feeling. The easy kind you get on a weeknight when most people are home, winding down for the day. Jake needed some supplies for work, and I figured I'd grab a few groceries while we were there. Lily, full of energy as always, bounced along between us, holding onto Jake's hand and chattering about a toy she wanted to check out. At first, I didn't notice anything unusual, just the usual Walmart crowd. Tired parents, college kids grabbing last-minute items, a few employees restocking shelves. But then I saw her. A woman, maybe in her late 40s or early 50s, dressed sharply in a dark blue suit. She looked completely out of place. Most Walmart shoppers were in jeans or sweatpants, comfortable, casual, but she looked deliberate, put together, like she was there for a reason. And she was watching us. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. People glance at each other all the time, right? But as we moved from the grocery section to electronics, I kept spotting her, always nearby, pretending to browse. She picked up a phone case, flipped it over without really looking at it. In the clothing aisle, she smoothed a sweater between her fingers but didn't check the size or price. And every time her eyes flicked toward us, Jake noticed it too. "Hey," he murmured while we were in the toy aisle. "That woman's been following us since produce." I nodded. I thought I was just being paranoid. We both glanced at Lily, who was crouched down, looking at a display of dolls. She was oblivious, completely lost in the moment. "She's not shopping," I said quietly. Jake exhaled. "Nope." That's when I decided to test something. "Let's go to Home Goods," I said, keeping my voice light for Lily's sake. "I need some storage bins." We took a long route, cutting through several aisles. 5 minutes later, she was there, standing by a rack of towels, not looking at them, looking at us. That was enough for me. "We're checking out," I told Jake. We made our way to the front, trying to act normal for Lily's sake. The woman didn't follow us to the registers, and for a second I thought maybe it was over. Maybe she'd just left. Then we walked outside. Jake pushed the cart while I held Lily's hand, heading toward our car. It was then that I saw her again, standing near a concrete pillar in the parking lot. She wasn't pretending anymore. She was just staring. No shopping bags. No car keys in hand. Just standing there, watching us. I felt my stomach tighten. "Stay close," I muttered to Jake. Then she moved. She raised her hand, just a slight flick of her fingers. A dark sedan pulled up next to her. The sedan had tinted windows. I couldn't see the driver. The woman didn't look at us again. She just turned, opened the back door, and slid inside. The car pulled out of the lot quickly, merging onto the main road and disappearing into traffic. Jake and I didn't say anything for a moment. Then he exhaled sharply. What the hell was that? I shook my head. I don't know, but I don't think it was random. Lily tugged on my sleeve. Who was that lady? I forced a smile. Just someone leaving the store, sweetie. But my pulse was still racing. As soon as we got home, I called Walmart and asked to speak with security. The guy on duty listened to my description and let out a low sigh. You're not the first person to report something like this, he said. That made my skin crawl. The next day, I called the police. I didn't expect much, but they actually took it seriously. They asked for details, the woman's description, what she was wearing, the make of the sedan. A week later, an officer called me back. We've had multiple reports, he admitted. Different locations, different shoppers, same kind of thing. Walmart increased their security presence in the parking lot after that. But I still think about that woman. What if we hadn't noticed her? What if we hadn't left when we did? And worse, what if she hadn't been alone? Night shift at Walmart has a way of getting under your skin. The aisles are never completely empty. Not really. The air feels different after midnight, like the store itself is waiting for something. You start noticing things you wouldn't during the day. The way the fluorescent lights flicker for no reason. The faint hum of the freezers that never quite stops. The way you swear you hear footsteps even when you know you're alone. My name is Eric Davis, and 12 years ago, I was the night shift supervisor at a 24-hour Walmart in Indiana. Back then, we ran a skeleton crew. Just me, 2 stalkers, a maintenance guy, and Silas, who worked frozen foods. Silas was a good worker, a little high-strung maybe, but reliable. Tall, wiry, the kind of guy who always looked like he hadn't slept enough. He had this weird thing about the frozen foods section. Said there was a cold spot in the aisle that didn't feel right, like it wasn't just temperature but something pressing against his chest. I shrugged it off. The freezers ran at full blast, of course it was cold. That night, around 2:30 a.m., I was in the back logging inventory when Silas came up to me, pale as hell. "Eric," he muttered, voice tight, "there's someone in frozen foods." I grabbed my walkie. "A customer?" "No." His eyes darted toward the front. "Something else." I sighed. Maybe some teenager had slipped past and was messing around. We had cameras, but half the time they lagged or glitched. So I walked with him to the aisle. The freezers were cracked open slightly, a thin mist curling out onto the floor. At the far end, just beyond the glass doors, something moved. A flicker. A shadow. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. Silas was behind me, his breath coming in, quick, shallow bursts. "You see it, right?" he whispered. I wasn't sure what I saw, but I felt something, and that was the start of the worst night of my life. I scanned the aisle, my pulse picking up. The freezers lined both sides, their glass doors reflecting the bright overhead lights. But in the reflection, something looked wrong. A figure, tall, almost stretched out, standing at the very end of the aisle. Not moving. Just watching. I stepped forward, but Silas grabbed my sleeve. His grip was tight, desperate. "Don't." His voice cracked and I hesitated. Silas wasn't the type to joke around about this kind of thing. I squared my shoulders. "Who's back here?" Nothing. I kept walking, pushing the freezer doors closed as I passed. The cold seeped through my gloves. My breath fogged up in front of me. Another step. The motion sensor lights flickered just for a second. The figure was closer now. I turned the corner fast, expecting to catch some idiot messing with us. But when I rounded the aisle, there was no one there. Silas was backing away. No, I saw it. It was right there. I rubbed my arm, suddenly freezing. My walkie crackled, but no one was talking. I checked behind the shelves. Nothing. Looked in the stockroom. Empty. I turned back to Silas. "I saw its face," he whispered. I frowned. What do you mean? He swallowed hard. It was smiling. Silas refused to go back into frozen foods. I tried to get him to calm down, told him it was probably a trick of the light, but he wasn't having it. I know what I saw, he muttered, and it saw me too. I didn't argue. Instead, I called over one of the other stalkers to take over Frozen and told Silas to take an early break. He grabbed his coat and left through the employee entrance without another word. The rest of the night was uneventful. No weird shadows, no flickering lights, but something still felt off. The next morning, our regional manager, Mr. Lewis, came in early to check the security footage. He liked to keep tabs on the overnight crew, making sure we weren't goofing off. I heard there was a situation last night, he said, sipping his coffee. Yeah, I admitted. One of my guys thought he saw something in frozen foods. Freaked him out pretty bad. Mr. Lewis raised an eyebrow and turned his monitor toward me. Funny, because there's nothing here. I stared at the screen. He was right. The footage showed me walking down the aisle, closing the freezer doors, looking around. But there was no shadow, no flickering lights, and Silas wasn't in the shot. I called Silas later that afternoon. No answer. By evening, I got a text from another night crew member. Silas is dead. At first, I thought it was a sick joke, but the next morning it was on the local news. They found him in his apartment, sitting on his couch. No forced entry, no sign of struggle. He was just gone. Cause of death? Inconclusive. He was 38. No health issues. No drugs. Just dead. I didn't sleep that night. The next shift, I walked through frozen foods again, just to prove to myself it was all in my head. But when I got to the same spot where Silas had seen that thing, I felt it. The cold. Not just freezer cold, something else. It pressed against my ribs, heavy, like standing too close to a turned-off radio with static still humming through the speakers. Like something was right next to me. Watching. For weeks, no one wanted to work frozen foods. The night crew avoided that aisle unless they absolutely had to stock it. Even then, they moved fast. No one talked about Silas, but we all knew. I stayed at Walmart for another 5 years before transferring to another store. I never told anyone about that night. Not really. What would I even say? That a man died after seeing something that shouldn't have been there? But I still think about it. About Silas. About that footage. And sometimes, when I'm in a grocery store late at night, I catch my reflection in the freezer doors and swear I see something behind me. Smiling. Working overnight at Walmart isn't for the weak. The shifts are long, the pay isn't great, and the store takes on an eerie stillness once midnight hits. The hustle and bustle of the day vanish, leaving only a handful of employees stocking shelves, cleaning up messes, and dealing with the occasional odd customer who wanders in at 3 a.m. I started working at the Walmart on the edge of town about 5 years ago. It wasn't my dream job, but I needed the money. Rent wasn't cheap, and finding a decent-paying gig without a degree was tough. The night shift had its perks. No managers breathing down my neck, fewer customers, and a certain peace that came with the quiet hours. But there was something else too, a feeling. From my first week, I noticed something was off about the store. It wasn't just the flickering lights or the way the motion sensors sometimes triggered when no one was there. It was the silence. Not the normal, peaceful kind, but the kind that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up. It felt like the store itself was holding its breath, like something was waiting. At first, I brushed it off. I wasn't the superstitious type. It was an old building, of course it had quirks. But then I started seeing him. A man, always in the back aisles, never shopping, just watching. I assumed he was a customer at first, maybe a trucker stopping in for supplies. But he never had. A cart never picked anything up. And every time I turned to get a better look, he was gone. The first few times I laughed it off. Maybe I was just tired. But the more I saw him, the harder it was to ignore. And one night, I decided to find out who he was. That was my first mistake. It started small, a shadow at the end of an aisle, a figure near the loading docks. Every time I tried to follow him, he'd disappear around a corner. I even asked my coworker Mike if he'd seen anyone unusual hanging around. "Nah, man," he said, shoving a box of cereal onto a shelf. "You're probably just seeing things. Night shifts mess with your head." Maybe he was right, but I couldn't shake the feeling. One night I decided to test something. I went to the back, near the frozen foods, where I had seen him the most. I waited. Minutes passed. Nothing. Then, just as I was about to leave, I saw him again. A tall man, thin, standing near the storage room. I stepped forward. "Hey, can I help you?" No response. He turned the corner. I rushed after him, but by the time I got there, the aisle was empty. The only way out was through the stockroom, and I knew I would have heard the door open. I felt my stomach drop. That was the first time I felt real fear. I checked the security cameras the next morning. The footage showed me walking through the aisles calling out. But there was no man. No shadow. Nothing. I told myself it had to be a trick of the lights. Maybe my brain was filling in the blanks. But then, I found something that changed everything. A few weeks later, I was helping clean out an old filing cabinet in the manager's office. It was mostly outdated paperwork, schedules, and incident reports. Then I found an old newspaper clipping. The article was over a decade old. A night shift worker named Daniel Hayes had been murdered in the very store I was working in, stabbed in the back of the stockroom. No suspect, no motive. The case went cold. I sat there gripping the paper, my pulse pounding. The pieces started falling into place. The man I had been seeing, the strange feelings, the cold air near the freezers. I wasn't just seeing things, I was seeing him. I couldn't let it go. I started asking questions, but no one wanted to talk about it. This store should have been shut down years ago, one older employee muttered under his breath. I checked online for more details. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. Daniel Hayes had been a stalker, just like me. He had reported seeing someone following him inside the store. His co-workers thought he was paranoid. Then, one night, he disappeared during his shift. They found him hours later, slumped against the back wall of the stockroom. He bled out alone. I felt sick. Whoever killed him had never been caught. And now, I was seeing someone too. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Until the night I saw him outside. I quit my job a week later. I couldn't do it anymore. The whispers in the aisles. The feeling of being watched. The shadow that always seemed to be just out of sight. My last shift was uneventful, but I left with a knot in my stomach. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced in my rearview mirror. And there he was, standing near the store entrance. Not moving, not disappearing, just watching. The headlights of passing cars lit up his face for just a second. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. He wasn't a ghost. He wasn't a shadow. He was real. And he had been inside that store all along. I hit the gas and never looked back.